Should we move on to everyone's second favourite thing that they buy?
Lasers.
Laser beams. Because
Fucking laser beams.
lasers are really cool.
Do you know, I've always hated them in Airsoft. Literally, always hated them. The only time, I've flirted with them for years. Always gone, well, I can just about see where that dot is, but, and again, especially in CQB, it gives you away more than it helps you target anyone. Only time I ever had an eye-opening moment with lasers, not literally because I'd burn my retina out, was when we started using night vision buying IR lasers, and I saw the point.
Right, so lasers. I also don't get the obsession with lasers. Potentially it's because people don't buy decent optics, don't set them up well, and want some sort of reference aiming point. But then they almost certainly haven't bought a laser which can be zeroed either. Yeah. So it's probably shooting miles off. Yeah,
I mean, we use those element clone packs, and you can't really zero those. You get a rough idea of where you're shooting and stuff. But...
So, yes.
They're not great, though, for it.
So in the real world, Gouge, lasers are used for two reasons. They quite often use a visible in training so that the trainers can see the muzzle direction. So you got they go through a kill house, the trainer's above, and they can see what the pattern of the operators are doing with their muzzles, and it's a reference point for the operators as well. Yeah. So they can see if they're sweeping. Sometimes you have to sweep, but they can see if they're sweeping muzzles over everyone. The other main reason for using a laser in the real world that you've just talked about is IR. So when you're under night vision, you've got a pointer which is visible only to night vision users and not to the visible eye. Most airsoft lasers aren't IR. Some are. This is probably the lowest price point IR laser, which is the Element make most of them. They're rebranded for everyone else.
But I think there's also a bit of a weird dichotomy with airsoft lasers. So I used to use a sight mark laser at one point, just messing around with it, like mainly for the tracer videos we did for the old business. And that was a lovely green laser and you could zero it properly. However, it was really bloody dangerous. If that caught someone in the eye, they weren't seeing, you know. So airsoft lasers are very hit and miss, whether they're safe or not.
I think it's wise to assume that there are no eye-safe lasers.
Yeah.
I have designed a laser pointer for a business and I went through all the laser legislation. And even the little boardroom laser pointers are not eye-safe.
Not that safe,
yeah. I mean, you have to really try hard, but...
Yeah. And let's be honest, right, with the best will in the world, it's the lowest common denominator. There'll always be somebody on site who thinks it's really good to point it in people's faces.
Yep.
So personally, I don't really think outside of a Milsim with very responsible players, you really need them or should have them.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if, and a lot of site owners do, just flat out ban lasers.
And there's a lot of myths like, oh, green lasers are bad, red lasers are okay. It's got nothing to do with that at all. I mean, there's a limit of like how strong they are to a degree, but all of them are bad for your eyes, like you were saying.
All about the wavelength. But
yeah, exactly.
I think you just need to assume that all lasers are dangerous. They should never point them at anyone, which is kind of the point when you're using an IR laser, you're meant to be pointing at someone.
Yeah.
Part of the issue with that is that there is no chrono for lasers. Yeah. We can chrono BB guns, and we've got a rough idea what energy output they're doing. We can't really chrono laser output. We don't really know. Yes, so outside of a Milsim with responsible people that I know really well, I wouldn't want lasers pointed at me. Yeah. IR lasers, because you can't see them, you may not know that someone's pointing an IR laser at you. Yeah. So really quite dangerous. I think as long as we're sensible, those risks can be mitigated, but I'd want to know who I'm playing against.
But one thing I will say for those units, and one reason I like them, it's got a torch as well. And for me, they're not the greatest torch, but I like the fact that I've got a torch or an IR laser on that unit.
Yeah, so the real ones, this is an IR illuminator.
Yeah.
So it's not visible at all. And a lot of the airsoft ones, they changed that to make this a little torch.
Yeah, mine's just a little torch on mine.
This is a GMP D-ball, which is a much better made IR laser. This is the one I would tend to use if I'm actually playing. I have it locked to low because high is ridiculous. In fact, low is quite ridiculous anyway. It also has an IR laser illuminator, so rather than a point, it's much more spread. And it's got a red and an IR laser here. The red laser is slaved to the IR laser, so they move as one. So you can zero the red laser. And the IR will be exactly the same point of impact. Certainly for airsoft purposes, it's close enough. On this one, they are meant to be slaved, but they point in completely separate directions, so it's really quite difficult. There are ways of holding... But then again, they're like, what, 35, 50 quid? The IR ones are quite expensive, but they're still not. Yeah, this is 200.
Yeah, exactly.
This is probably
like in everything, you get what you pay for.
And then a real version of this would be £1,000.
Yeah.
And the other thing about This one's, it locks up properly on the rail, whereas this one...
It's just like a single point of contact.
Yeah.
It's not the strongest either, is it?
And it moves around a bit. Any 50, 60 metres, this can lose 0. It gets a knock, quite easy to do in the dark as well. These are one of those things which are expensive. To get a good one, are expensive. This is probably the minimum realistic real standard.
I think this is why we always say night vision isn't the cheap. There's no cheap way of doing night vision well. It's not just buying a pair of goggles, it's getting the accessories that work with it.
So these GMP D-balls are probably the cheapest way of doing it, really. And then still not brilliant. I'd like a lower powered version of this for shooting at 50 metres and under. This will reach out, and there are videos on the channel of this going out to 300, 400 metres with a laser, and you can see it easily. So it gets way more powerful.
Yeah, that Sight Mark one was insane for things like that.
Yeah. So, but I don't think the market's big enough to make a laser that to a decent standard.
An Airsoft IR laser that's properly zeroable, like what, 5 people would buy it?
At a cost that Airsoft is willing to pay. You can get real ones, you can get real ones of these, but you're looking £1,500, £2,000 for a decent IR illuminator.
The subject of illuminators.
Torches.
Yes.
So this is my Surefire. I've got an IR head on it. So this will put out an IR flood beam. You've seen it loads on the channel. I'll probably cut in some footage of me walking around with it. And this can switch from IR to a white light illuminator very easily. Lots of people have torches on in a woodland game, and you really don't need one, and it's just dead weight.
And again, so I'm going to flick back to that G36 thing. When I took that red dot off, so I lost the battery, I then thought, well, I'm not going to use the laser, I'm not going to use the torch, took all those off, had a kilogram lighter gun.
So, yeah, so, I mean, torches have come a long way. If you just want a white light, any of the kind of Element, again, I'm saying Element because they're probably the most common brand. Lots of people rebrand them. There's probably about 5 factories in China that make them. Yeah. They're all actually pretty good compared to the stuff we used when we started. It was all 60 lumen bulbs. Oh yeah,
I had 120 lumen flashlight bulbs, and that was considered to be like excessive.
And now 600 or 1,000. It's funny. Every time there's a new generation of flood illuminators, be they white light or IR, the conversation is always, oh, that's too much. And then it goes up, then it goes up. We're now at 1,000 lumen torches, and we're still having the same conversation. It's still going up. If you're playing CQB, yes, absolutely, have a torch. Know what you're shooting at. I think one of the fundamental concepts that I'd like to see more in Airsoft is people taking responsibility for making sure the target they're firing at is actually at the target they want to eliminate.
Look before you shoot.
And to do that, you either need a white light, under night vision. Even though night vision is not a magic bullet, you still may need some additional illumination to see what's going on. You may think there's someone in the shadows, but you can't really PID them. You might need to just hit them with some IR or hit them with white light to identify them. Having a torch in a dark environment, absolutely. It's also a safety thing. Yeah, if it's dark and you can't see where you're going, you can always put your torch on and see where you're going. Generally, torches aren't too bad. I've not really had any trouble with any of the kind of main branded white lights.
I find stroby ones a bit weird when people do that in case someone's epileptic. That would always bother me, but like...
A lot of them, they do that because they're cloning something like this that has double setting. So instead of putting an IR bulb in, they put some strobe in. I wouldn't do. The strobes are not a great idea. Obviously, unless you're using an IR night vision setup, you don't need an IR head. If you do, again, it's going to cost you. There isn't really a cheap solution for that.
And also, I've noticed you quite often fit a remote switch to yours, whereas I don't really bother, to be honest.
I do on some of the stuff. So this has a remote switch on, largely because the torch is so far away from, because this is a longer handguard.
Oh yeah, because you have to reach your hand
right out here. So I just have it in a more comfortable position, right here. This one, I don't. This one's just on a
push switch.
It's on a push switch. You can put remotes on if you want, depends how ergonomic it is. But in general, I think torches I'm much more ambivalent about in terms of accessory. If you need one, you need one.
I recently sold the best torch I ever owned. It was the Inlight Enforce. Sorry, it's the Enforce one. Do you remember that one I had?
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant, and that did UV or white light, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And it was just so well designed, and like because of the curvature of the grip. When your hand was on the socket, your thumb just rested into it.
Rest, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's perfect.
So yeah, if you're going to use IR, you're probably looking at spending some money. You don't necessarily need a Surefire. There are other heads. I've just put this one together over the last couple of years, and it's quite useful. But if you need a white light torch, you need a white light torch. If you don't need one, probably best just to leave it off and not worry about it. They tend to get used as, again, in dark environments to help almost like as a tracer, so they can see if they don't have a properly set up sight and they're just snap shooting, so they're almost, you can see the white BBs as tracer. So you get used for that as well. I'm not really into that, but if that's the way you play, that's the way you play. But if torch, again, I think the message, if you don't need the torch, why have it on?
The only time I would ever say, I think every airsofter should probably own one purely for night games, or if they go somewhere that's going to be night playing, because I think you do need to make sure. Okay, you could have a handheld torch, but I think having a rifle mounted one makes sense. In fact, some weekenders won't even let you go if you don't bring a torch with your kit.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't have to be weapon mounted, but it kind of makes sense if you're going there anyway.
Yeah. And they can get shot out, so, you know. And having this shot out would be
expensive.
Expensive.